We begin on the pulse with the two ex-inmates of Guantanamo Bay who are currently in Ghana, who have become Ghana's responsibility and will not return to their country. That's according to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Shirley Ayoko Botwe. There has been pressure from the opposition NDC and sections of the Ghanaian public for government's decision on the matter following their expiration date in the country. This is how it all went down on the floor of Parliament this morning. We can hear both the minority and majority leaders.
And reduce the pursuit of foreign policy to NDC MPP colors. Unfortunate for our republic. Very, very unfortunate. Foreign policy, Mr. Speaker, you've been a diplomat. The U.S. remains our strongest bilateral partner. You need them today, you need them tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, I think that what this foreign minister should be inviting us to do, for which we will support her, is that the time has lapsed. Thank you. Do we grant an extension? I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Majority. Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity granted to make some comments on the statement from the Minister responsible for Foreign Affairs. Mr. Speaker, and let me begin by saying that the minister is the Minister of Foreign Affairs or the minister responsible for foreign affairs. She is not the foreign minister. She is not. The minister is a Ghanaian. Ghanaian minister responsible for foreign affairs. She is not a foreign minister. I think that this is very rudimentary. That people should know. And the minority leader indicates to us that he wishes that the debate on the statement was not reduced to partisanship. The Speaker, our orders are clear, and Order 72 provides that after a statement has been made, we can only comment. It is not subject to debate. So they get it wrong at the very outset when they believe that they should subject it to debate. And that is exactly what they did. Mr. Speaker, the orders provide, and for emphasis, in Order 72, a Minister of State may make an announcement or a statement of government policy. Any such announcement or statement should be limited to facts which it is deemed necessary to be made known to the House and should not be designed to provoke debate at this stage. The Speaker, so the Minister came and fed us with facts. Nothing more, nothing less. That is how people should understand it. Mr. Speaker, the minister informs us, and I believe it is very important to recognize this, that the content of the agreement, there appears to have been an extension to it. Indeed, the Speaker, on February 19, 2016, when the then minister responsible for foreign affairs came to this house, she spoke to us about a note verbal which had occasioned the acceptance of the two people. Mr. Speaker, when she came to this house and spoke to us, she did not brief us about the refugee status of the two. Because, Mr. Speaker, at that time, the refugee status had not been granted to them. So the information that was given to this House, which all of us are privy to, did not contain the fact that refugee status had been granted to the two people who have come here, who have been accepted into the system. It is in July, we are told, July 21st, 2016, that they were accorded refugee status. So one would have expected that in the handing over note, this additional information would have been provided to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This, unfortunately, was not transmitted. It was not part of the handing over note. And that is a tragedy.
And Foreign Affairs Minister Shirley Ayoko-Botchwey has been updating Parliament on these two GITMO detainees who were brought into the country 2 years ago. My colleague Joseph Opoku-Gakpo is our parliamentary correspondent. He's in the studio with me. But before that, let's look at these two GITMO detainees, who they are, what they've been doing all these 2 years, and what we can say. So one of them is Mahmoud Omar Mohammed bin Atef, and he arrived in Ghana on January 7, 2017. He is a nationality of Yemeni, and he was incarcerated for 14 years in Guantanamo Bay detention camp, and he's been recommended for release since 2006. And then his age has been roughly estimated at 38, and American intelligence analysts estimate that the second detainee, Al-Dubi, was born in 1980 in Mecca, Saudi Arabia. So these are the two detainees we've been harboring in the country for the past 2 years, and there's been a lot of noise about what becomes of them. Today, the Foreign Affairs Minister. So let's look at Khalid Mohammed Saleh Al-Dubi. He also arrived in Ghana on January 7, 2017. He's also a national of Yemeni. He was incarcerated for 14 years in Guantanamo Bay detention camp, and he was also recommended to be released in 2006. His age is estimated roughly at 37. And American intelligence analysts estimate that he was born in 81 in Taif in Saudi Arabia. So we're told that these two detainees have become refugees, and that's the reason why the Foreign Affairs Minister was in Parliament today to brief the House. Opoku-Gakpo, bring us up to speed. What has the Foreign Affairs Minister been saying?
So this is a conversation that actually started yesterday on the floor of Parliament. The minority spokesperson on Foreign Affairs, Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, was asking the majority leader when we would see the Foreign Affairs Minister bring to Parliament an agreement on how we would want to continue keeping the two in the country beyond the expiration of the earlier agreement, which expired as at January 6, 2018. Yes, 2018. Right. And so she updated the House. In summary, the point she makes is that government is still undertaking the necessary consultations to come to a decision on what will happen next. She says government's hands are tied on what the way forward should be, because the agreement that the NDC government reached with the U.S. administration was that they would be in the country for 2 years. Over that duration, the U.S. government was going to take up the responsibility for their upkeep. Yeah. But then the agreement that the NDC government signed with the U.S. government did not have an exit plan on
as to
what
how
happens after the 2 years. After the 2 years. And that there was a specific portion of the agreement that said the two of them should be integrated into the Ghanaian society. So she makes the point that after the expiration of the 2-year duration, one thing they are clear in their minds on is that returning them to the United States of America is not an option. So now they are looking at possibly a third alternative, which is to get them out to a different country. I asked her about whether that could be Yemen, where they come from. She says, as far as they are concerned, there's currently no government in Yemen, so they wouldn't be able to get them back to Yemen. But then right now, they are at a difficult position in terms of what the way forward.
One interesting thing I heard is the fact that they are now, they have relatives in Ghana. I mean, what do they mean by that?
So the minister disclosed that on the floor, that they have family. Okay. I asked her for specific details on that. She says the two of them are married. They've gotten married to people who are not Ghanaians. You know, they are also from their own region, and then they got into the country, and then they got married to them. One additional detail we gather is that one of them actually has a child. He's gone ahead to give birth to the wife, who is with them in Ghana at the moment. And then he raised the question about how much more this is costing us to keep them as a country. But then she makes the point that the responsibility that the U.S. government had to them covered any possible family that they could have. So up until January 6th, then it covered that. But beyond that, all of that virtually becomes the responsibility of the Ghanaian government. Of the Ghanaian
government. Let's listen to the Foreign Affairs Minister, Shelley Ayoko-Boche, on the current status of the GITMO 2.
One of the ways or options I was exploring was whether a third country will accept them. Unfortunately, at this moment, our hands are tied. I came to state the facts as they are. The fact of the matter is that these people were accepted into this country. No plans were made post 6 January 2018 for them. The American government, in the agreement, ceases to be a partner to this agreement in terms of the obligations post 6 January. And therefore, we are left with our obligations, and that is to try and integrate them into Ghanaian society, which is what the government then did by granting them refugee status.
So, but when are the people willing to stay? Has the ministry had any deliberations with them?
This issue, yes, directly has involves the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but there are other ministries that are also dealing with it. The other ministries are in direct contact with the two. We are not. We deal with the foreign policy aspect of it, the foreign relations aspect of it, because it involves another country, which is the United States. But we are in the middle of discussions. These are matters of security, of a security nature, and therefore I don't want to disclose anything. But that is why I left my statement open-ended.
And that was Foreign Affairs Minister Shelley Ayoko-Boche updating us on the two GITMO detainees. But let's speak with Mr. Tete Paddy, who is Programs Coordinator at the Ghana Refugee Board. Good afternoon to you. Many thanks for your time on the Pulse this afternoon.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
Mr. Tete Paddy, I would like you to listen to what the Foreign Affairs Minister said, then we can go on with this conversation. Opoku Gakpo here is our parliamentary correspondent. What has the Foreign Affairs Minister been saying about their conversation with the Refugee Board regarding these two GITMO detainees?
So, in reference to Benatef and Al Dabi, the Minister told Parliament that the Ministry of Interior has informed her ministry of records at the Refugee Board, which revealed that the NDC government at the time granted the two detainees refugee status, and that this followed a request by the National Security to the chairman of the Ghana Refugee Board, and that they were issued a decision letter which was dated 21st July 2016, recognizing their status as refugees. And then she went on to say this has implications because having attained refugee status per international law and the refugee law, that's the PNDC law 305D, they deserve the necessary protection and any forced repatriation if they fear that if they go back to where they were brought from, they could be prosecuted.
All right, so Mr. Tetapadi, you heard that. What can you say about this letter that was written to the Refugee Board by the National Security requesting for these two detainees to attain the status of refugees?
It's pretty straightforward. The letter effectively grants them the refugee status, and so they are recognized as such. This means that all the conventions that govern the management of refugees apply to them. And so, yes, they are recognized as refugees.
So what considerations did you make under the Refugee Act before accepting these detainees as refugees?
Right. Well, generally speaking, particularly with people who have been involved in combat before, there's a program that is referred to as DDR. DDR is demobilization, disarmament, and then reintegration. Once a person who is being through combat has gone through that, they can be considered for refugee status. Now, the understanding is that these two gentlemen have gone through the DDR program while in Guantanamo Bay. And so, for that reason, it qualifies them following assessment for consideration for refugee status.
So what does it mean to qualify or classify these detainees as refugees?
Well, there are 5 grounds for somebody to be recognized as a refugee. One of them is if they are afraid that they will be persecuted upon return to their country of origin. If that persecution is based on some grounds that are listed in the UN Refugee Convention. If these have a legitimate fear of return to their country of origin, which is the case for these men from Yemen. As we all know, Yemen itself is pretty much in turmoil as we speak. And so they cannot return to their country of origin. They have a legitimate fear of return to their country of origin.
And so we know that for the 2 years that they've been in the country, they were being catered for by the U.S. government. Now that they are becoming refugees, whose responsibility is it to take care of them?
The responsibility of the government of Ghana.
And how will that have a toll on the government's purse?
Well, it's again, as the foreign minister said, some of these issues are security issues. So I'm not even in a position to shed some light on that. I don't know the arrangements that have gone into their upkeep thus far, and so I'm unable to speak to it.
All right, many thanks to you. Tetapadi is Programs Coordinator at the Ghana Refugee Board. Opokugako, you heard him speak. Did the Foreign Affairs Minister explain how the government of Ghana is going to take care of these two refugees?
No, but it's a little interesting. The position Tetapadi holds as an official with the Refugees Board appear to run contrary to the position that the minority in Parliament holds. And to quote the Boku Central MP Mahamayaga, who is the chairman of Parliament's Subsidiary Legislation Committee, he claims that once they attain refugee status, responsibility for them actually becomes that of the United Nations, and that's the position that he holds. And so, well, he didn't understand how come, you know, the government officials were raising concerns about this possibly becoming a burden on the government of Ghana. But Shirley Ayokobotwe, the Foreign Affairs Minister, says it's the reason why they are exploring other options on how they should be kept. She says one thing they know for certain is that the U.S. government will not continue taking care of them. So it's actually become government obligations.
It's clear. We're clear on that.
That's 100% clear.
All right.
But they are looking at how they can lift that obligation of government.
Were there other issues raised by, for instance, Honorable Kujeto Ablakwa, the spokesperson on foreign affairs?
So he made the point that everyone has known all along that the 2-year agreement with the U.S. government was going to end as of January 6, 2018. And so he found it a little strange that the minister came to Parliament and was not ready with a new agreement in order for the House to ratify, and created the impression as though she was surprised that the duration had expired, and then they needed to move into a different phase. But then their specific demand is that the right thing for government to do is to find a way to sign a fresh agreement to the U.S. government and get that agreement to Parliament for the necessary ratification. But the majority team, they hold a different opinion. They think government signed a very bad deal. Those are the words of Dominic Nitiwo, the Minister for Defense, who think that the NDC government could have done better with the necessary negotiations, so we wouldn't have been caught in the situation we are caught up in
this situation. There was also the Special Prosecutor's Bill. Tell us more about what transpired in Parliament.
So there is the official letter from the President communicating to Parliament his appointment of Martin Amidu as the Special Prosecutor. This letter was read to the House by the Speaker, Professor Michael Quay. It detailed the background of Martin Amidu as a former prosecutor, as a former Attorney General, who had seen it all when it comes to legal practice, and as a good material for the job at hand. And in the President's letter, he made a specific request to Parliament that just as they expedited work on the approval of the 110 ministers, the President expects them to do same, and as soon as possible get Martin Amidu approved for him to begin his work.
We've seen a lot of reactions from the minority since the Special Prosecutor Bill came to the House. Was it same today?
So the minority leader, even as at yesterday, he made that call on the President to as soon as possible communicate the appointment to Parliament. Okay. And he said that this is something that they would support in terms of his nomination. So clearly the official minority position is that they were going to support his nomination and give the necessary backing for the approval, which they hope to do. So they're looking forward to when the appointment committee would meet, schedule a date for that public setting, and the minority leader himself is a member of that committee, and so we expect all the necessary questions to go to him.
We're expecting some interesting things to come up. All right, many thanks to you. Joseph Opoku-Gapo is our parliamentary correspondent, and you're still watching The Pulse with me, Aisha Ibrahim.